Welcome to Real Life Fiction. I'm Matt James with Conundrum Publishing, international best-selling author of the Jack Riley Adventure series. And today I'll be talking to author Michael McBride. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So for the viewers and the listeners that might not be familiar with your work or just familiar with you in general, give us just a little bit of a rundown on who Michael McBride is.
All right. Well, I've been publishing since 2004, initially in the small specialty press, hundreds of copies at a time, and gradually moved up through self-publishing and traditional publishing to the point where I can now do this full time. I'm generally writing in science fiction / horror, and I also write traditional thrillers as Michael Lawrence for St. Martin's.
Yeah. I was about to ask about that because you were doing the Michael Lawrence stuff as well with the more traditional thrillers, as in just it doesn't have as much of like a supernatural
There's no supernatural elements.
Okay.
More conspiracy based. So
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
had time to release those.
Yeah. No, I've done the I guess most of my books revolve a little bit around like the mystique and like the lore of things, but I try to keep it as grounded as possible.
Yeah.
I like science fiction and horror. I love writing in it. I just end up revolving back to like the more traditional action adventure thriller style. So where does like your Unit 51 series, for instance? I know that's kind of like your baby. That's kind of like your long-term, like, that's like Michael McBride, like the name. It's like the Unit 51 series is kind of how I would define you. If somebody says, hey, Matt, what does he write? And I said, check out his Unit 51 series. Like, where does that come from as far as that series in general? Because I know it's done really well for you and I know you love writing it.
Mm-hmm. I released a book called Subterrestrial through an Amazon imprint in late 2015, and it just boom. So I was contacted by an editor at Kensington who said, I want you to write something for me. And I said, what do you want me to write? He said, I want you to write something that hasn't been written before. A lot of good that did me. So we started talking about, he wanted something along the lines of, what was that? In New Mexico, they had the mysterious humming sound for a while.
Oh, yeah.
To try to find something along those lines. And I came up with the cymatics, the sound creating visual patterns, and kind of built the story around that. I don't remember writing it truthfully.
No, yeah. I've had like, oh, where did you get the idea for this? Or I've had, what's the inspiration behind this character? And I'm like, what?
As a working writer, you have to just crank. You're in the one book, then that's done. You move on to the next, and you got to keep moving. So
no, I know. It's a tough process because there's certain stories that you just fall in love with, but at the same time, you have to move on. And that's what I've been currently dealing with, editing 2 different books right now of my own while writing the next one. And it's like trying to remember the story, like the stuff from the prior book, because I just shut it down and move on to the next one. Cause you have to.
Yep.
And so now I'm going back and editing those 2 books, which is Anubis Plague, which is the first book in a series with Nick Thacker that I'm writing. And then Jack Riley 4, which is The Undying Kingdom. And now I'm writing Jack Riley 5. And I'm like, too many stories at once. I just like, thank God they're both pretty much done. Like I'm over it. And now I'm just solely working on one book. But I'm in that weird where I'm writing the new book while editing the old book still. And I'm kind of like, okay, it's kind of information overload.
You have to have that character growing at the same time. So then you're looking back at this previous character, is like, what haven't I developed yet? Where, and you're in his head now, and you're looking back at the past, and it's just, what did I miss? What am I missing here? Because it seems like the character isn't right when you look back at the older stuff.
Yeah, no, and no, that's a good point to bring up too, because the character development is very key. Like you can have almost like the James Bond character, right? Where every movie is essentially the same movie, right? It's James, it's the conflict, it's the girl, it's a little bit of the hokey bad guy, and then it's James coming out on top. Like that's like the traditional like methodology of the James Bond movies, and every movie is its own standalone thing, right? So it's like, which is fine. And I like doing that now more than I used to. I always used to have every single book butt up against the next in a series because I wanted there to be that flow. But then I also understood that you have more creative freedom if they are a little bit more standalone. Like you can just boom over here, boom over there. You don't have to weave that path, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I love to develop the characters. So it's like you finding that, I guess, that happy medium of developing the character properly, because that's ultimately what the reader enjoys most is the character, at least in my opinion, or at least maybe in the genres that we write in. But
right. Otherwise, they're thinking, boy, haven't I read this book already?
yeah. And if it's the same character over and over again, like I said, it's the cookie cut, copy and paste story. So I'm not that kind of writer. I want I want to progress the characters. Now the stories might not interlink 100% anymore, but the characters do, and I think that's what's ultimately important. Obviously you feel the same way because you're nodding and going yep.
You got it.
No, yeah. What about some of your like some of them the more standalone stuff? Like I see you have Chimera out there that's been doing really well, and you have you have the new series that you've started with the book Contagion, right?
Contagion.
So what's going on with those? Because I know Contagion's doing really well too, and obviously with it being a part of the new series for you, where's that headed?
That's going to be a trilogy. I initially started writing it for my editor at St. Martin's. He's like, I need something that's horror. Horror's big right now. I want something that's kind of a combination of The Stand and Swan Song. So I said, well, I can do that, man. That's right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And so I started writing that, and then about halfway through, we got COVID. So he's like, we're not going to release any pandemic books right now. So
oh, come
I got 100,000 words sitting right here. And so eventually I just I started making it less about the pandemic and more about the Hopi lore, the Native Indian, the Native American lore of the apocalypse as foreseen by the Hopi, which is just really fascinating.
Yeah, I've where did I read about that? I think there was a book that mentioned some of it a little bit here and there. I can't remember the title, to be honest. But yeah, no, that was always an interesting concept. So I've always was really big into more of like the Mayan doomsday stuff and like that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's which is it's cool. It's cool, except when it didn't happen, and then it was
right.
What now?
Well, I'm hoping this
it didn't happen. I was happy, but. No, but yeah, no, that's kind of cool. So it went in a little bit, and that's what kind of happens sometimes. So like in this case, I don't know. I mean, I'm just spitballing it. Like sometimes something like that can happen, and it's a little bit of a positive almost, right?
Oh
yeah. So it forced you to go in a different direction, and in this case, I'd assume it was for the better and creatively for you. So
right. Well, you start plotting something, and then the next thing you know, you're going on a wildly different tangent, and then you got to recover from that. But it generally tends to be the best thing you write in that series, and it leads you to where you ultimately want to go and where it's successful.
Yeah, and that was kind of like beginning of pandemic-ish area. So late 2019, early 2020. I realized that like as things were getting locked down and as people weren't going anywhere, I saw, and this was just kind of doing some research too with some other authors, a massive spike in the travel, adventure, historical, like moving and shaking, bopping around the planet type of
Yeah.
story. And I was like, wow, yeah, I mean, I guess it does kind of make sense, like I like you live vicariously through your characters, right? Like this
Mhm.
is like something that I would love to be a part of, minus the apocalypse world ending
Right.
stuff. But that's kind of the idea. So it's like if I enjoy it as much as I do writing it, then the readers got to enjoy it as well. And as far as like I don't travel a ton,
Mhm.
and I do through my characters. So the people that weren't traveling, like
Right.
Florida, we never got shut down too bad, thank God. And then it was,
Yeah.
we were still very, very much, I guess, free. But
And
it
you're
was,
still alive.
yeah, and we are, yeah, and hey, the job I had before doing this full time, we never shut down. We actually gained operation hours because we were so busy.
Right.
So it was a real pain in the butt. Everyone else is locked down. We're the only game in town, and people are going nuts. And it's like, and
Exactly. I was in healthcare before this, so I'm glad I retired
yeah,
before that.
yeah, yeah. I unfortunately was just a pretty much kind of a retail grunt. I was just earning my check, going to work, coming
That's
home, writing, dealing with hanging out with the family, supporting them.
Mhm.
I was working in order to figure out a way to do this. So it
Right.
was like it
Exactly.
wasn't like I'm not putting a ton of effort into a typical career
Mhm.
because I don't want a typical career. And that's the mindset I'm in. Is I'm gonna have a job. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna do well at it until I don't have to do it anymore.
Right.
you
Well, I
know,
didn't
and, and
success
that's
in writing until
yeah,
I started going back to school, and then it's like, well, now I can do it. But
yeah.
before that, it was just I was doing the same thing you were, and it just wasn't working.
No, yeah, yeah. And then you're writing part time, and it worked. Like I got a bunch of don't get me wrong, I got a bunch of books out in a short amount of time,
Mhm.
considering all things considered. 27 titles in 8 years, so not too shabby. And
That's amazing.
no, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I had
Mhm.
zero free time outside of normal living. It was just
Right.
writing. But now I have more time, so I can actually take a little more time
Mhm.
with the stories. And so I'm actually writing a little less, but to me the stories are better
Right.
because you're not as, I guess, as rushed, mentally, and like so I like being able to do that. But
When you're at home, the family sees you at home. So they're like, it's
yeah,
like you're not at work anymore, and you can come do all those things that they need to have done right then, right then. It's
yeah, that's the
harder.
fun part about this. Thankfully, my kids they're 9 and 5, and
Mhm.
they're both in school together.
More power to
So
'em.
my youngest just started kindergarten, so this is the first year I've had both kids on the same schedule, and I am free from 8 to 2 Monday through Friday, unless there's a holiday, or some days I don't pick them up from school. My mom will, or my
Cool.
sister-in-law will, and so I can have more time at home, working.
Mhm.
But yeah, when there's like days off or a kid's homesick from school and I'm here working, and I've had my daughter sitting on the couch, like my office, this is my back wall, but I
Mhm.
face pocket doors in my den,
Right.
and the other side is my living room, and I'll keep them open just because I'm here, and I'll have my daughter sitting on the couch, and I can see her peeking at me while I'm recording and like talking, and I'm like, yeah, that's not a distraction at all, and thankfully they know not to come in here while I'm talking to
Right.
somebody. But yeah, if I'm home and they're home, it's definitely not work time, it's dad time, so
Right.
I get it. Yeah.
Well, and that's part of the best part about doing this job is you have the family time too. You're not
Oh,
trying to work full time, write full time, and do all of those things at the same time.
yeah, that was, and people, so when I was telling people that I'm putting in my 2 weeks, I'm not doing
Mhm.
this anymore, blah, 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 they're like, what? I'm like, no, it starts with being home more.
Right.
And whatever that involves, obviously working from home, but it's also just being present,
Yeah.
and missing out on a lot of stuff with my kids at their age already and not being thrilled about it.
Mhm. Right.
So yeah, and I'm like, I'm allowed to feel that way. And it's like, I don't want it, like, no, I'm sad. I'm emotional about it.
Mhm.
But that's the decision that's driving me to do this is I want to be home. I want to be present.
Right. I get to
Um,
be hockey dad, so I don't miss the games. I don't miss the practices.
yep.
Unfortunately, hockey dad turns into just chauffeur, obviously, across the country now. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the most important part of my life. I love the writing, but
Yeah.
eventually these kids will grow up and they'll be gone, and I'll miss some of the crazy. If you can hear those dogs barking at my
Yeah.
unit,
No, it's
um, I'll miss
I usually have a cat next to me, or my dog has his head between my legs, looking up at me like, "Please stop, pet me." I
right.
get it. No, yeah. I'm the same way. My both my girls are in dance. They're in acro. So my oldest is in 4 classes. Yeah, she's 9, and her instructors are like, she needs more because she's like,
Yep.
she's progressing really fast.
Mhm.
And we don't want to see her stall out. And I'm like, no,
Right.
I don't care. It's just, I also don't want to overload a 9-year-old. And my 5-year-old's doing it now, and for her, it's just more hang out with the friends. It's fun. Like, she
Mhm.
enjoys it. But my oldest is like she sees like she's progressing, she's getting better, and I'm like, I wasn't there for like a lot of it, and it was
Mhm.
painful.
Yeah.
So now I'm there for all of it. It's great. Like, I'm at dance for 4 hours every Tuesday.
Mhm. That's cool. And learning some new
4
moves.
hours.
Yeah.
Meeting
It's
some parents. Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's cool. It's cool because I mean, that's what I wanted, and that's what I'm
Mhm.
getting. You know,
Right.
but so with the stories, there's got to be an inspiration. There's got to be an influence where, like, I tell people over and over again, like, this color is my life. And I know it's dumb, but this is like, it's like the deserts of Egypt. It's like the action adventure. It's the archaeology. It's like that kind of stuff. Like, I live and breathe that stuff when it comes to
Mhm.
like entertainment stories. What about you? Like, where did it come from for you to where you had the idea that maybe I can actually do this? I could write, but it's not just that. It's, you've been influenced to do it from some medium.
Right. I would when I was at the University of Colorado, maybe that was a long time ago now. I had an instructor say, "Oh, you're really good at this. I think there's a future in this for you." And that's the worst thing you can tell a kid because then their life is ruined. But yeah, I was initially like a Stephen King, Dean Koontz hack, and I mean, my first 10 novels I wrote were unpublishable. They were just not good. But through the course of, I mean, somebody said, was it 1,000,000 words to get good at your craft? It took
King,
a
Stephen
million.
King. Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
that was a Stephen King quote.
Yeah. And so it took me that million to finally get to the point where I was publishable. And then as you start publishing books, you're big on the research too. I mean, the research is key. But as
Sure.
you're researching stuff, you find out some stuff like, that's really cool. And so then that gets tucked away in the back of your brain, and that's percolating for however many books as you're just writing. And suddenly you have all these ideas going back there, and you can just draw from them anytime you want. So,
Yeah, no, that's kind of like me, is I'll I'll have like I'll have like an idea for something,
mhm.
but I'm not necessarily ready to do anything with it yet. Whether I'm too backed up with other stuff, or maybe the idea at the time feels too small. So,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it's there. So it's like, I'm yellow ledger pad guy. I have them all over the place, and I'm literally jotting down stuff. Like, I have notes in my phone too, but I prefer to handwrite them.
Right.
I just retain the knowledge better with handwritten stuff. But yeah, it's like, I'll specifically for me, I guess, because I was like the movie geek. I was like the movie nerd to the point to where I've had 2 other podcasts before this that were dedicated to movies.
Right.
And it's like, I love like the behind the scenes stuff though. I like the making of it. I like seeing what goes into getting these stories together. So it's kind of like the writing, right?
Mhm.
It's that part of it that I love as well. It's not just the finished product. And being able to kind of, I guess, do it on my end is kind of a way for me to do it like they do.
Right.
Obviously not in Hollywood, but it's kind of the same idea, right? It's the creative process of putting it together. And
Mhm.
I was picky about a few movies, and my wife was like, "Why don't you try to write something? Like, your creative is like, you go nuts with like camera angles and this is and
Mhm.
that's." And like, she goes, "You should be a Hollywood director, honestly, because you see it differently than the average moviegoer." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's probably not going to happen." But
Right.
she's like, "What about writing? You do early like, I was doing arc reading for Jeremy Robinson, and I was
Mhm.
doing like beta stuff for him, and I met some authors through there and got to know like the people, not just the writer."
Right.
And she's like, "They're normal people like you,
Right.
and they probably had the same idea when you were this age." I was like
Mhm.
29 and
Right.
29 or 30, 29, I think. She's just like, try to write a book. I'm like, all right. It ended up being, it actually ended up selling pretty well, but you know, you look back on it, it probably should, based on the quality of the work. But
right.
but yeah, it was all because of just you know, you have something in you, and you're just like, I got to get this, like, I guess the creative part of it out,
Right.
and it ended up being books, out of all things. But
And for some people, they shouldn't publish that first one.
No, like, I wanted it out there. Like, I wanted to be a published author. And I mean, it was all self-pub, Amazon, you know, Kindle, KDP and all that stuff. And I didn't care. I'm like, I just wanted it out. I started doing the book covers myself because I didn't have the money and or want to pay anybody.
Oh, you do great work.
No, thank you.
You do great work.
Thank you. Yeah. And that was just because I didn't want to pay anybody, because I found out how much, like, really good book cover artists can charge, and rightfully so. I mean, there's guys out there that are amazing. Like your covers, the newer ones that you've put out recently, even the re-released covers that you've been doing. I have your page open while we're talking. Like your new Burial Ground cover, your Extant covers, Contagion. They're beautiful. They're gorgeous. So I mean, it matters. It absolutely matters.
Absolutely.
You know,
people can say, ones I did myself. These are professional. These cost money. But
yeah, no, I mean, you've done a good job. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, like that's why, like, with newer stuff with Conundrum Publishing that I have now, we have David Barron's doing them, who's a phenomenal author himself, but he's a awesome cover artist. Cool. So if anybody needs any work, David is for hire. I
might have to steal him from you.
He's really good. He's really good, and he's a cool guy too. He's a really nice guy. Great writer in his own right as well. But he's a great cover artist. So like anything else, like what about now? Like as far as, like, I know I'm not the only one to say this, but like as a writer, I don't really have a lot of time to read anymore.
Right.
But if you are reading, are there specific authors that you still kind of like veer towards?
I wasn't able to set aside reading time and exercise time, so I kind of combined them. I do the treadmill every day, and I read and I walk fast. So that's been, just discovering I could do that just has made it awesome for me. So I can actually get the reading, get the exercise, and not some slob sitting at my desk all day.
Yeah.
There's some, I always read the James Lee Burke when it comes out. I mean, he's an amazing writer. I love John Connolly, James Rollins, Preston Child. I used to love Lee Child until he retired. Yeah. Those are kind of my go-to. Michael Marshall. Those are kind of my go-tos. Recently, I've kind of been going down a fantasy wormhole. I don't know
interesting
why, but it's great to read outside the genre too. I read Pierce Brown, Red Rising.
Oh, yeah.
It's a phenomenal series. Amazing. And then I'm blanking on his name now.
I have one for you if you haven't gotten there. And the best part is specifically if you're into audiobooks, so we've talked to Jeremy Robinson. So the only reason I bring this up is because it was one of the first books I read of his, and it was called Antarctos Rising.
Right.
And an amazing book, more sci-fi fantasy, but he brings in so much of like the historical aspect, especially the depth of research is just insane that he did for this series. And what was really great about it is it brings in a lot of the biblical themes. Right. So like the Nephilim, for instance, you know, the demon seed. And it was like, man, reading this book and the way that he brought in like prehistoric science with like theologic research, with action adventure, with a lot of like military aspect. I was like, the different genres that got baked into that series, and all of the audiobooks are done by R.C. Bray, which is like, period. Like you see RC attached, you're like, yeah, it's probably gonna be pretty good. But that story with RC's performance was, Bob just nailed the audio stuff, and that's more fantasy than anything else. And I was shocked at how much I loved it, because I usually am more like the James Rollins type, where it's more action thriller, but you know, a little bit of sci-fi baked in, history baked in. But going that route with a little more of the fantasy, I was was probably one of my favorite series that I've read it several times, and I've gone through the audiobook several times.
Gotcha.
And then recently I'm going to start reading is Lost in Time from A.G. Riddle, the new one that he just released,
Right.
which is going nuts right now. I'm
Right.
tracking it because I'm dumb like that. I want to see what these guys pull in as far as numbers, because
I don't think you do, man.
he's kind of what every author should dream to be,
Right.
is what he can do, and he's super nice guy. But I don't know. Did you think of the fantasy series while I was going off on my tangent?
Yeah, Jay Kristoff, Nevernight.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I you know what? I know the name. I've seen it.
Yeah, he's a
Nevernight.
great writer.
Great, right? Okay. No, I'll have to check it out. I've seen it. There's just a million other things that I need to consume first, while also trying to write. So
I know.
it's just,
I hear you.
unfortunately, it's like there's so many good books out there. I'm probably never going to get to, and it's disheartening. But what about so like the process of writing for you? When you get the idea for a new story, like I always bring up that I'm a visual guy, so I'll see a picture of like a gorgeous landscape and go, wow, where is that? And then I'll find out where it is, and I'm like, I want to write in that. Like that's where the Undying Kingdom, which is the fourth Jack Riley book in my series. I saw this awesome image of what ended up being Shangri-La, like a concept image. And I'm like, wow, that's gorgeous. I'm like, that would be cool. I'm like, wow, I've never had a story in like the Himalayas, like in Nepal, Tibet, like that area. I'm like, I mean, all I see is like how gorgeous it is and how peaceful it is, and how just like serene. And I'm like, huh. So then, you go down that Google rabbit hole for that area, and I like to bring in the history, the mythology, the folklore of the area, just anything I can that's just going to make that story just explode with like information, but not in like a super heady kind of way. But I don't know about you, like where does it start for you? Like, is it kind of like that, or is it kind of something else?
I think I come up with the early seed of the final story, and it kind of sits in my head for a while until it comes toward the forefront and it starts putting itself together. And then from there, I can really start the research. And I mean, Google Earth is the most fantastic invention ever. I mean, you can look at anywhere on the planet. And, then you start researching the location, like you said, the history, the folklore, everything about it. And then you can kind of start fitting in the characters, and well, this is somebody who'd be there. This is somebody who could bring something unique to the story. This is somebody who'd know something important at the right time. This is somebody who'd be able to do the physical work when they get in trouble. And you start kind of putting together all these different pieces and fitting them into the right place at the right time. And next thing you know, you're bringing in elements that you didn't even foresee initially. So,
yeah, and that's kind of like that's going to actually steer to the next question I have for you. But going back to Contagion with the Hopi aspect of it, was that in the earlier drafts of it, or was that something you added later after the book was on pause for a little bit?
It just wasn't really as
central to it, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay.
It plays more into the end game in the third book. It was just kind of, I had some really great characters I wanted who were Hopi, who could kind of see the world changing around them and fit it into their prophecies.
Gotcha.
But it really turns into a fulfillment of that prophecy in the third book, where they really just save the people who need to be saved, and the bad guys don't make it.
Yeah, no, I was curious about that, because that's very much like that research rabbit hole is going into like the Native American kind of the folklore mythologies and stuff. So I wasn't sure if that was like the initial setup of that. Like for me, it was with Jack, I placed him in Wyoming because originally the first book in the series was supposed to take place in Wyoming, but which ended up being the second book in the series, the Roosevelt Conspiracy, around the mythology I built around Devil's Tower. So Wyoming was just, well, why is Jack in Wyoming? Well, he just lives there.
Right.
Okay,
There's no other reason to be there.
Yeah. What does he do? I'm like, Well, there's nothing to do in Wyoming. So let me think. Fine. He's a park ranger. He's a Yellowstone ranger. Fine. Because he was a military guy, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Sure. It works. It works. But I'm like, but then what do? You start going down that research rabbit hole in the area, and you realize like predominantly the people in the area are Lakota and Sioux,
Right.
Native American. So his best friend and his mentor is a Native Lakotan who kind of brought him along as a ranger. And then I bring in another Lakotan who is Bull is his name. I bring in his nephew Hawk.
Mhm.
So I'm like, so it's like all of it just because I dropped Jack in
Right.
Cody, Wyoming.
Mhm.
I was just like, okay. I'm like, where Yellowstone? What's a city outside of Yellowstone? Cody. Oh, I think I know what Cody is. And then you research Cody. Oh, Buffalo Bill. Okay, Bill Cody. I'm like, all right, cool. He lives in Cody, Wyoming.
And then you learn way too much about it.
And you learn way too much about Cody, Wyoming, and it's 11,000 people that live there.
Right. And one of them reads your book and tells to tell you how terrible you did giving up all the details about their place when in actuality it's a Coke machine outside the diner, not a Pepsi. You know?
Ooh. Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, I did that in the second Dead Moon book in my series, and the entire book takes place within a 25-minute drive.
Mhm.
The entire book takes place because it doesn't, in a post-apocalyptic world, 25-minute drives don't exist.
Right.
So like from Lake Worth Beach to kind of around where I live, it's about 20, 25 minutes. And from start to finish, that is first chapter, last chapter, and all of the chaos in between. But it
Mhm.
is my entire, where I've lived my entire life in this part of
Right.
South Florida is that book. So it was unbelievably great to just absolutely and utterly destroy my hometown.
Right.
And I think that's like a goal for a lot of us. That's kind of,
Yeah, that's the thing. I can't tell you how many books I've like given directions to my house in, and I was like, I wonder if somebody's going to take these literally because like there it is.
yeah.
Tell you how to
No,
get through my house too. It's just weird stuff.
yeah, no, that is unfortunate, especially when you, because I love to pull in stuff like you have, where you pull in stuff from your childhood or your current state. So like living in South Florida, a lot of my characters are from here, so it's
Mhm.
like it just, and they went to the same high school I went to, so it's like, because why not? It's like they're one guy played for football team, the other guy played for the baseball team. They both went to the, you know, it
Mhm.
just, I want to pull in that stuff
It's
from
authentic.
yeah, it is. It really is. And it's just, it's fun too, because then you'll have some readers that know you that are reading this going, oh, that's cool. You
Right.
know, well, other readers have no idea what the hell you're talking about. So it's, which probably
But they
most of
buy
them.
it.
Yeah. But so as far as your research,
Mhm.
like there's the two very, very distinct. Uber outliner writes the book before he writes the book. And then there's the pantser writes from the seat of their pants, 100% organic. I like to identify myself kind of somewhere in the middle, probably leaning a little bit more towards Pantser, just a touch. I like the organic feel of writing the story and developing it as it goes.
Mhm.
That was kind of my question going back to like the Hopi thing
Right.
was like, I don't know. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten like a third of the way through the book and said, to hell with it. We're going this way. This is better.
Right.
And I'm completely okay with that. And I know some reader or authors that have like chapter by chapter outline and they don't deviate. And while it's fine, and I do know it's much quicker to write a book that way because you
Right.
have like a target in every chapter to go through. You don't have to think as much, I
Right.
guess. But I don't know. I just like the way of the organic feel. I guess I feel more creative, more accomplished as I'm like writing the book.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think I fall somewhere in the middle too. Maybe a little more toward the outliner in my old age here. I have a pretty good idea of the beats of the story, where I want to get by the end of the first act, by the end of the second, end of the third. Um, there are certain scenes that I really want to incorporate, and I'll try to keep those. But otherwise, it's got to be the characters directing the course of the story. I mean, they need to make decisions that aren't forced. And so if I'm writing and I get to a point where I want the character to go a certain way, but there's really no logical reason for them to do that, I have to abandon that and just run with what the characters would do, and then follow that story from there. So it's like you said, it's a largely organic process with kind of a skeleton built beneath it.
Yeah, like I'll research like, I have notes everywhere. Like, it's not
Mhm.
like I'm not researching,
Right.
windows are all, I got God knows how many tabs open while I'm writing a book.
Right.
But it's like the story itself, like when I open my Word doc and I'm writing, it's like 2, 3, 4 chapters ahead. I'll have like an idea of
Right.
like, as I switch, POV, depending on the series, depending on, just the timing in the book of it. I'll have an idea of where I want to go. And then, but as I'm writing that chapter and as dialogue opens up and as the scenery around, that's the one thing is with at least the genre that I
Mhm.
like keep myself in, it's very, very much based on the landscape, on the scenery, on the location that they're in, because a lot of it's very remote,
Yeah.
or it's super metropolitan and very busy, and there's like a lot of stuff that gets in the way just because that's naturally what happens.
Mhm.
So it's like the landscape definitely, at least for me, kind of drives the story in a way, because it's like point A to point B might be 4.5 hours away.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, yeah, you could just drop your character from one location to the next, but I want to know what happened in that 4.5 hours. Not saying I'm going to script the 4.5 hours out,
Right.
but like what happened? Was there anything cool along the way? And then I'll Google Earth it and see, oh, wow, that's kind of neat. That's kind of cool. I'm like, well, if I think it's neat and cool, won't the reader? So I'm like, I kind of want to include some of that. So it's like that's where that the landscape kind of
Right.
directs the story. And I found some amazing places to include in some of my books, just
Oh, yeah.
because I was trying to figure out point A to point B, and I realized there was a point A and a half right in the
Right.
middle that was really cool. And I'm like, well, that's another 2.5, 3 chapters of story because that location's neat.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And you never know what they'll find when they get there, and the characters might just go in a completely different direction from the one you initially plotted.
Oh yeah, and that's absolutely, absolutely it
Mhm.
happens. So this is actually kind of cool. So you and I have actually talked quite a bit through Messenger,
Mhm.
and mostly about some of the more
Music.
brutal hardcore and like
Yeah.
death metal.
Uh-huh.
Like it's a fun conversation with the two of us whenever there's like new bands that we discover,
Mhm.
or rediscover like a new album coming out from a
Right.
maybe an older band.
Mhm.
And I always found that kind of cool. Like I would post something about oh man, this is like some of the most brutal chuggy music ever, and you'll comment on it down below, and I'm like, all right, cool, I got
Yeah.
another guy to share this with. But without going like too deep into that, because God knows most people aren't going to know the bands that we're going to talk about.
Right.
But I always find it fascinating because it's like I'll like show people most of the music I listen to, and they're
Mhm.
like, "What?"
Yeah. I
Like,
can't even read that name.
I can't read the name. It looks like a cat just clawed up the side of my couch.
Yep.
The vertical, the people need to Google like death metal names and they'll figure it out.
Right.
But
Well, that's somewhere probably when I was just about to turn 30 that it said most people never buy a new album. Like 90% of new people never buy a new album after age 30. I thought, well, I don't want that to be me, you know? So I mean, that's
they're
dumb.
not wrong. I mean, they're
No,
not wrong.
but when you're in your 30s, you're not really hanging out with music people anymore, you know? So you kind of have to figure it out on your own. And
Sure.
eventually you end up, I don't know, in my case, just getting harder and harder and harder by the year. And so now I'm listening to 17, 18-year-olds playing music. And it's like, I mean, same age as my kids practically. And it's a different thing. And it's a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've been listening to this stuff. Oh man, specifically like the underground stuff. Like not like I mean, I grew up listening in Pantera and Slayer
Right.
and like that kind of stuff. Mostly, I would say probably Pantera was like the first like major metal band that I was like super deep into when I was younger. But I was getting into some of this stuff back in early high school. Like I was probably 14 or 15 and discovering some of these bands, and some of them I still listen to this day. And even the albums, I mean, I'm still listening to 20, 25-year-old albums in this genre of music.
Mhm.
And I just find it more fulfilling, I guess. There's more creativity to it. And that's also, as a former drummer, I was a drummer in a band for 6 years,
Mhm.
and it's like the technical side of a lot of the music I just appreciate the hell out of,
Right.
because we played in a punk rock and roll band and it was fun. It was amazing. Like major influences were like Dropkick Murphys, the Ramones, like very, very, very straightforward punk, just like more like just like happy-go-lucky beats, like really like sway. The Bouncing Souls is another big influence from us that we had back in the day. Another phenomenal band that's, God, I think they're almost 40.
That old, huh?
35 maybe. I think they were like early 80s maybe is when they got started. But I mean, I've been listening to Social Distortion since I can remember, and they got started in 79. I mean, their whole theme is gambling with souls since 79. So I mean, and they are a punk rock and roll, like old school. People know Social Distortion. If you just pull up their greatest hits, they're gonna be like, wow, I know these guys, and these guys have been around forever. But but I guess just as the drummer, that could never play that kind of stuff, just because it's like mind-boggling how good some of these guys are.
Right.
Man, you get into some of the technical aspect of some of these metal bands and you're just like blown away. Like some of the newer ones, they're not newer, but they're newer on like the popular scene is like, I know, is like Lorna Shore. You get into like some of their, and you go down the Lorna Shore rabbit hole and you're just like, I'm glad I'm not a musician. I would quit. I would quit after watching these guys play because of just how amazing they are. And it's fun. I just think the music is just fun. Like and the gutturals and the high blackened screeches and just the chugging breakdowns and just some of them have these awesome massive like Shadow of Intent and Lorna Shore both have these like massive symphonics in the background. And like Shadow of Intent is the name of a ship from Halo 3. And that's where they got the theme of their music was those like in the background of their like brutal music. And Lorna Shore kind of does the same thing. So you get these awesome like symphonies in the background with these brutal songs, and you're just like, your skin starts to crawl, and you're just like, man, you don't get that with any other music.
No, it's just so complex, and there's so many things going on at the same time. I mean, that's what I like about it. When you have people, they hear the Cookie Monster growls, and that's all they can hear. But these are guys who are actually, playing their windpipes like instruments, and it's amazing when you start really looking at it from, like you said, the technical point of view.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Probably the first tech metal was Beneath the Massacre. Another phenomenal name, I might say so myself. They're a Canadian metal band. They're freaking lights out. But that was one that I got into when I was younger and still listen to this day. I love those guys. They're like the first, like, what meter is this in? This isn't in 1, 2, 3, 4. What is that a 7? Like, what is, I'm trying to figure out. I'm like, I can't bounce my leg to this. It's like, it's all in odd time signatures and stuff, but I love it. I just think it's great. Now I'm getting into like the instrumental, like prog bands. So like Pliny is a big one for me. There's Polyphia, there's Vitalism, which is a cool metal band from Brazil. But it's all no vocals. It's just instrumental, and they're all like vary all over the place with like time signatures, animals as leaders. And it's great to write to because there's no vocals. So it's just this unbelievably intense, complex music. And it's neat because there's no like consistent time signature. So I never get like lulled by it. I'm always like on the edge of my seat listening to it while I'm working. So it's kind of neat. But I'm also a big movie score guy, so I listen to a lot of just movie scores, like the classic movie scores. But so outside, obviously, we've been talking. We're both very, very into our family outside of this work. But anything else that you kind of partake in outside of that, as far as a little bit of a hobby?
Between the writing and the driving for hockey and cooking, cleaning, laundry, shopping, all that stuff, there's not a whole lot of time left over.
I get it. Yep.
So occasionally I read a book.
Yeah. I need to start doing that more. I've put off a lot of reading as time has gone by. I really need to start reading more regularly. Because like I said, there's so many good books out there. I mean, especially now, I haven't really dove into anything in so long that it's like I got a ton to choose from. I'm not waiting for any new series. I'm actually way behind on most of them, so I have a lot to choose from.
Right. Oh yeah, and you realize that most of these major authors, your big fandom, whatnot, they have a new book every year, and then you think you're keeping on top of it. Next thing you know, it's like I'm 3 books behind. Has it really been 3 years since I got to that person? But
Yeah, unless you're an Ernest Dempsey fan like I am, and he writes like 6 a year, and then you're like, "Wow, I'm 19 books behind."
Right.
Thanks,
Right.
Ernie. I appreciate that, bud. Jeremy. I mean, all of my favorite. I guess they're considered indie authors still. They're bigger than that to me. So it's like I don't know what to call them, but they are because they're all self-pubbed.
Right.
It's like A.G. Riddle. I mean, a lot of his stuff. Jerry. It's his stuff, and it's like I mean, technically he's a self-pubbed author, but I'm like, it's a different world. Self-pub. It was always the small indie guys, right? And now it's a completely different part of the industry. It's
Mhm.
actually quite amazing. That's why, like with Conundrum now I'm doing their managing editor now. If I had a title, doing a lot of editing on the side for other readers. It's actually kind of cool to kind of dive into their stories, even if they're not stories that I would particularly choose to read. It's kind of neat to be able to dive into their work
Right.
as a part of my job now, which is kind of cool.
Mhm.
It kind of keeps me into the world outside of my keyboard, I guess. But
How do those authors take your criticism or your changes?
usually they're pretty cool about it because the good news is that's the one thing with our industry, right? Is like I put my like just this is just me.
Mm.
I go through a book probably about 7 times before release,
Yeah.
from first draft to last edit. And people are like, "What?" I'm like, "No, it's at least my process. It's first draft as good as I can get it, but I'm not going to stop to fix things because getting the story out is the hardest thing. Second draft is fixing everything and continuity and all that
Mhm.
stuff. Um, Third, or in this case, it's usually the first edit, is um, me pretty much reading through the book a third time, but now focusing on the fixings,
Right.
not just the story, but grammar, all that stuff, sentence structure, whatever. And then fourth, it's I use Grammarly, like a lot of people do now. Once that goes through, which is like super dense, which I do, every time I open Grammarly, I'm like putting my head down, going, "Oh my god, that's like this." I'm like, why do I feel like I'm not getting better at this? It finds so much
Right.
stuff. But I'm
Right.
like, it's also just super picky, and it
Right.
doesn't understand like nuance with like fiction,
Yep.
and in action adventure, which is supposed to flow a little quicker, a little
Right.
faster. So like structure isn't always, I guess, perfect.
Right.
But then I put it through Pro Writing Aid, which is another awesome AI program.
I use that.
Um, yeah, I use both. I do Grammarly and then I do Pro Writing Aid. And then once I'm done with Pro Writing Aid, I send it off to a couple of early reader proofreaders,
Mhm.
get their edits back. So by the time I get their edits back, it's like 7 times I've gone through the book. And that's one reason why I just want to get
Right.
it published and good. I'm like, I'm so sick to death of this story.
Yep. And even then, it's not perfect.
No, it's not, unfortunately. And that's the one thing is you get blind to the story after
Mhm.
going through it so many times because you already know what happens. So you're not really focusing on the words anymore.
Right.
You're on the physical words. You're just
Mhm.
thinking ahead to the story. And but that's a part of it, right? It's like you're doing all this stuff on your own now. So it's great
Mhm.
because I wouldn't be doing this unless KDP existed at the time,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
like the self-publishing stuff. I mean, that's how I got started. And
Mhm.
now everything I write is through some sort of publisher. But
Mhm.
it's now I'm publishing my own stuff through Conundrum. But
Mhm.
um, like my Jack Riley series is signed through Severed Press out of Australia, and funny enough, book 4, Undying Kingdom, on pre-order today. Even though
Congratulations.
this interview won't come out for a little, but yeah, it's as of today. So yay,
I
I'm
like
done.
it.
I'm
Yeah, good
done.
luck watching those rankings.
Yeah, exactly. God, I hate doing that. I hate doing that.
That's
But
the worst part. And then
yeah,
the
well, thankfully this series has gotten a lot of attention. Although this is going to be I haven't had a book come out for 17 months, so
wow.
it's been a little bit of a dry spell for me, and I will blame the Corona on that.
Yeah,
I got into a really really awful mental funk for a little while.
I think we
Uh,
all.
yeah, I was working full time and then working like 50, 60 hours a week in retail and then trying to write and then kids. Neither kid was in school for a year and a half. It was just
And what
it
schooling they were getting was garbage.
yeah. Yeah, I got into, and this was during me trying to write Anubis Plague with Nick.
Mhm.
And Nick was, he's been so cool with it. And, now that we work together and stuff, it's been great. I mean, we work together now because we started writing together.
Mhm.
And it's been great. He's been so good with it because he was going through the same thing. He moved 4 times in 3 years,
Wow.
twice in Hawaii.
I could live in Hawaii. That'd be fine.
So he moved from point A to another island.
Mhm.
3 months later, left the second island,
Mhm.
moved to Colorado.
Yeah.
And then eventually moved from Colorado to his permanent residence in Colorado once everything got situated. So there was like 4 homes within like,
Right.
I was like, dude, he's like, yeah, talk about not writing for a while.
Interestingly, that's his neighborhood where he ended up is where I grew up.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, he's in Colorado Springs right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, I spent a little time in Colorado as a kid, just vacations and stuff. So I
Mhm.
mean, I love the area. We did a lot over in. We went up to Pikes Peak. We did
Mhm.
was it Vail? We did a few of the trips. Even though it wasn't in Colorado, we river rafted down the Colorado River. That
Yeah.
was in Arizona.
Mhm.
We did some of the western stuff in that area, and I love the area. I think it's
Yeah.
gorgeous. It's beautiful.
Yeah. We'll
Um,
miss.
yeah, no, yeah, there's like that's like me down here. It's like I
Mhm.
grew up down here and I've been here, so it's like I'm ready to leave, but I know once I do, if I do,
Mhm.
it's gonna be kind of one of those things where like, and what's dumb is I've been here my whole life, so like for me the beach means nothing.
Right.
I don't
Right.
care. I'm hot and sweaty all the time. It's like for me, it's like the beach. It's just an extension of life. So I'm like,
Right.
I miss the mountains. I miss the trees. I miss like the nothing as far as like just the peace. And it's like that's what I want. I want to go the other direction. So and
Well, we
but
have mountains, and we kind of just it's like the beach for you. It's like, yep, they're mountains. That's what they are. You want to wait
yeah.
a long line of traffic with Californians? Drive up into them. Have fun with that. Different.
Especially when there's like some sort of resort or something near you, especially like in Colorado, and you're like, people can't drive in rain in
No.
Florida when they don't live here. Like I can drive in rain because I'm
Mhm.
used to it, but
Right.
when it gets cold and it gets icy,
Mhm.
I'm going to
Yeah.
be that guy. I'm going to be the guy that's screwing it up for the locals.
Right. Well, shoot, when I was a kid, you could go up and go skiing. You spend $35 on a day pass. You can drive up there in a couple hours, drive back down that night. Now it's bumper to bumper up into the mountains every time. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
all through the winter, all through the summer, it's just sad how the state has gone, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is. But I think, well, that's like Florida now. I mean, everybody and their mother's moving here, so
Mhm.
I'm getting that influx. Like the city I live in, Wellington, where I live. Um, I remember when it was Wellington, then it became the village of Wellington because it got big enough. I was
Mhm.
like, wow, we're a village now. This is
I know.
cool, But we always hovered around like 20,000 ish,
Yeah.
30. I mean, we're up to like 50,000 people now, and it's like we're the number 2 destination in the country for equestrian, for like
Wow.
polo and horse jumping and stuff, and dressage and that. And I'm like we have like there's a lot of people like Tommy Lee Jones rides out here.
Really?
There's a ton of people that ride out here, like big names that have horses and like they own places. It's like massive out here, and it's so weird because Wellington's not big, and now it is, but it's that's it. There's
Right.
nowhere to build. It's we're butted up on the western part of West Palm Beach, and to the west of us is like the Everglades and like the swamps and like the farms. So
Mhm.
it's like you can't get any further west, and there's nowhere to build north, south, or east. So it's like
Sure.
people just keep jamming into this small town, and I'm like, man, it ain't my small town no more. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I get it. But so what if it could be more than one, but a reader that might not have read something from you, or maybe has not read something new from you in a bit,
Okay.
what book would you recommend? Whether it's first part of a new series, new standalone, something like, what book would you recommend somebody pick up from you? Like where would be like the best? Hey, Michael McBride book. Here you go. Like
Right.
this, because we all kind of go off in these little paths, these
Mhm.
little deviations that might not be like a Matt James book, or,
Right. I
but
think
like
Chimera. Chimera is a good place to start. It's a standalone, so you either, you like it or you don't. It's more representative of the science I dig into,
sure.
the adventure, the ultimate massacre that occurs inevitably.
And obviously the splicing of two different species, Chimera.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the Unit 51 is great if you're looking for more of adventure and more digging into secrets and conspiracies and whatnot. That's a pretty good place if you're up for a 3-book run.
And 51 meaning it's gonna have more like tradition, I guess more like alien type
Yeah, it's
background.
alien stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. So for me, it's no big deal. But just again, a lot of people like zombies. Oh, I love zombies. I'll read anything that's zombie related. Cool. Well, in this case, alien. I kind of feel like that's kind of gotten lost.
It's more ancient alien than little green men and saucers alien. But it's
but it's kind of like there's more like monsters now and like creatures, which is fine. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't see a lot with aliens anymore. And I'm just thinking about that. It's like not necessarily like the typical gray alien or the little green men, but just in general. Like, so yeah, I'm just thinking about that. Thinking out loud right now, Mike. See?
There you go. Or if you want to read a more traditional story, how about The Extinction Agenda by Michael Lawrence? It's
Michael Lawrence. Yep.
about a deliberately released plague and the pharmaceutical companies looking to make money on it. Can you believe the publisher pulled the support for that during the pandemic? Yeah.
I was about to say, are you sure it's a fictional tale?
I wrote it in 2013. So
yeah.
The publisher was really excited. They gave me an enormous advance and we're ready to do a lot of promotion for it. And COVID and Pfizer and no more. So
wow.
Bad timing.
Yeah, that's oof. That's so. Is that something that you would reacquire the rights to and just do yourself?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I have it plotted out to 13 books.
Wow. So yeah. And will that'll be under the Michael McBride name, or are you going to keep that under Michael Lawrence?
Once the rights revert, I'm going to put it under my name, maybe co-author it with Michael Lawrence, just so it's not lost in the translation.
Sure. Yeah. Jeremy did that. He had three names at one point. Jeremy Robinson.
Yep.
He had Jeremiah Knight and Jeremy Bishop. And Jeremy Bishop actually wrote some of my favorite stories from Jeremy. Funny enough, his sci-fi horror stuff, his Refuge series was unbelievable. If you want that kind of interdimensional like horror string theory, it's all based up in New Hampshire, in Refuge, New Hampshire, which is just this town that he created. I was thinking of funny enough, I've had this conversation with 2 other people now when it comes to when you deviate to a genre that is so far outside your norm, what practice would you recommend? And I know in this case you have a different pen name. So R.L. Kennedy, who I talked to recently, Randy is her name, Randy Lee Kennedy. She writes under Randy Lee Kennedy, and she started writing with soft romance. And then she was challenged to write something more thrilling by an author friend of hers who also happened to write post-apocalyptic. So she read a few books and was like, wow, I really like this stuff. And I like the fact that some of these books actually have a little bit of a love story based into it. And I'm like, no, they do, because there's like relationships and stuff. And depending on the story, the theme you're going for. So she started writing the Underground series, which has actually done really well, published by Conundrum. So throwing that out there. But she's actually done really well with it. And but she's writing under R.L. Kennedy because she goes, this is not soft romance, I mean, and then another author friend of mine, I won't say because he's not 100% committed to it yet. He's thinking about writing more. He writes more like monster and creature feature books, and he was thinking about writing more traditional action thrillers, spy thrillers, assassin thrillers, that kind of stuff. And some of the ideas that he's pitched has sounded amazing, and I'm like, man, these sound great. As the publisher, or as a publisher, I would be worried about confusing your audience.
Yeah, the audience
And
doesn't take it well if you step outside your get out
yeah,
that lane. You'll get a lot of reviews of, is this the same person? Where's
yep,
the creature? Where's this? Where's that? And
yep, yep. And he had already thought about publishing it
Mhm,
under a different name, so I think he's going to go through that route, which would be great because I think the books will sell well if marketed properly. But
mhm,
I've done the same thing. Like I've gone outside of um, my action adventure, I guess the expectations from my readers. And I've had a few books sell pretty well outside of that. They nothing has sold as well, at least in my case, as the Jack Riley books. But it's like I have so many stories I want to tell. I
mhm,
have a couple of sci-fi horror stories that
mhm.
I want to tell, and like I did one with Sub-Zero, and it actually sold really well. Actually sold really well, but that was a Severed Press release, and
Right,
that's what they specialize in.
right.
So I'm not like that's fine, but I just like I'm always afraid to jump into that other lateral move to a different genre, and then it just be an utter waste of time.
Yeah. I mean, our readers are our greatest asset. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do what
Yeah.
we do without them
And I
unless
enjoy the hell out of writing it. So it's like it's not like I'm writing this kind of I don't have a giant ass map on my wall because it's like I like this stuff.
aesthetically
I turn
pleasing.
around and just stare at it and just like I enjoy this. Like the
Right.
color, look at the color on my wall. Who paints their wall graham cracker brown? You know what I mean? My wife's like, "Oh my god." When she saw the color, I'm like, "No, I have a very specific plan for this room." It's like
Your
so
office.
yeah, I enjoy it. So I write what I love. So it's
Yeah.
like, and thankfully the readers have told me that they're like, I can absolutely tell you're a fan of what you write because it's just, you pour so much into it. And I'm like, no,
Mhm.
yeah, I do. I absolutely love it. And thankfully there's an umpteen amount of, research out there that I can, that I can get into. I'm never going to run out of a story idea. At least I hope I don't, because
Right.
that would
You
suck.
get to write off all your investments in research materials. I mean, it's
I'm trying to think when this would release. Yeah, it'll release by then, probably. Yeah, I will be doing a research trip to Disney soon
sweet.
with another awesome author. Actually, I'll be drinking around the world with Ernest Dempsey, so
Right on.
it's going to be great. Him and I have wanted to get together for a long time, and he comes down every year for Food and Wine Festival, and
Mhm.
we have annual passes, so we're up there 2, 3, 4 times a year,
Mhm.
mostly for all the food festivals.
Right.
And I'm like, when are you going? He gave me the dates, and I'm like, I'll be there. He's like, sweet. It's like, all right.
My
It's
wife and
like,
youngest have season passes too. So
yeah, yeah, I love it. We go up for the food festivals. I mean, I don't know, honestly, I don't know if we're going to extend our passes after this year, just because it's getting so ridiculously expensive.
it's so
Um, like when we first started, it was like 300 and something dollars a year for an
Mhm.
annual pass per person, and now it's like seven.
Yeah.
And it's like if we go twice a year, it's cheaper than the annual pass now. So I'm like,
Right.
it doesn't, unless you're going 4 or 5 times a year, which we just don't anymore. It's too hard with kids in school and stuff. So but anyways, that's what we talk about. Inevitably bring up some sort of food and wine festival or Disney trip. But
Yep.
so can you give me a recommendation not of yours, something that you would like the reader to enjoy, um, whether it's something completely off, like one of the fantasy series you've been reading, or maybe something that inspired you as a author?
I think if you're out there and you're looking to become an author and you want to see someone who can really, really write, you need to go look at James Lee Burke or John Connolly. These guys are just, they're wordsmiths, just amazing, phenomenal writers who can just make their characters sing. For plotting, for fun, go with James Rollins. He's always great. And
Yeah.
Preston Child. You want to really learn about your craft. You got to do a lot of not reading, a lot of nonfiction um, from authors, and also from just the learning perspective. Learn everything you can about what you're going to write, because there will always be someone who knows more, and that person is going to review. So you gotta know your stuff. Um,
Yeah. No, yeah.
yeah.
That was one thing I wish I would have done a little more was when I first started writing. Like I literally bought the Cliff's Notes, like writing fiction,
Mhm.
book, like how to write fiction. Because I have no school in this. I have no contemporary
Right.
education in writing. I mean, I got nothing. So for me, it was literally starting from nothing. I had the story, and I will say, writing, it's gotten, I mean, just much better over the years. Storytelling, I always considered myself a really good storyteller, but I was just learning to write.
Mhm.
Um, and because I could picture it in my head, it's like a movie, and I'm like, okay, where did I do this? So I'm like, I knew the story. It was just getting it down on paper,
Right.
and I wish that I had taken. I wish I had taken classes, honestly, but it's just that's more time and more stuff, and there's a lot of online courses. I even now, as
Mhm.
9 years into this, there's just courses I want to take. There's creative
Right.
writing classes I want to take, just to hone the craft, to kind of tighten things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a professional athlete, right? They never stop training. They never stop learning. So why should a writer?
Yeah. You got to read everybody. I mean, you can't read below you. A lot of people, they'll get stuck reading. I only read independents. I only read small press authors. And if you do that, you'll only write small press books in
Sure.
indie releases. You got to read the people who really know what they're doing to be successful at this, because
Yeah.
they've learned all the lessons and it shows.
Sure. No, yeah. I get it. I guess if I would recommend, I always recommend
Mhm.
my Jack Riley books, but I would actually recommend The Anubis Plague, because that is going to be out by the time this video publishes.
Mhm.
And that is the first book in a new series from Nick Thacker and I. She is a cross between, her name is Zara Kane. She is a cross between the new modern day Tomb Raider with Evelyn Carnahan, Evie from The Mummy 1999, Rachel Weisz's character.
Cool.
So she has like a lot of that learned knowledge, history, but she's also a badass. And
Right on.
the book's really happy with it. Was really stoked. Took me forever to write, for one reason or another. Had nothing to do with the story itself. It was just being able to sit down and actually write it. I just wasn't in a good headspace for a while.
Right.
And I would definitely check that out. I think people are going to fall in love with Zara. She's she's a badass. She was an American who was transplanted into London as a kid, eventually joined the British Army as a linguist, and she's magic when it comes to languages. So it's really cool. That's kind of like her superpower, we'll call it, where
Right on.
you know she also has the innate ability to survive everything, because
You're gonna
that's
need that.
yeah. I mean that's what that's what the action hero is. They
Mhm.
survive. They survive.
Yep.
And but being able to be really deep with like languages and knowledge, and that was like kind of her passion as a kid. I showcased that in the book, that she was already learning a third language when she was 10.
Mhm.
um, and it's just kind of one of those things that I just loved about her, because I never really had anybody like that in a book before. Like Jack speaks nothing.
Right.
Jack speaks English as well as I do,
Mhm.
uh, and he's learning a little bit of Spanish, because why not? But
Right.
he doesn't. He's terrible with other languages, and that's a part of the humor in the books, is that he's just like, bro, slow down. He's like poquito,
Right.
tiny.
Mhm.
Like he's very like me, like easy, easy. I speak
Mhm.
bad English. That's the only language I speak.
Right.
But yeah, as far as somebody else,
Mhm.
Ernie's newer series, the Relic Runner, the Dak Harper thrillers are so freaking good. It's people, the Courier, the first book in the series. It's very much what you would expect from Ernie when it comes to his Sean Wyatt adventure stuff, the archaeological thrillers that he writes. But the Dak Harper character is literally like the Jason Bourne of archaeology. Like he is a no nonsense, brutal tactician type of stuff.
Mhm.
But the entire series revolves around history and archaeology and stuff. So I mean,
Right.
I think he blends in the straightforward action thriller with the archaeological thriller like
Mhm.
perfectly in that series. There's 4 books. He's in the process of writing the 5th book right now, or finishing it, I should say, called Moscow Sky. He's writing, and I can't wait for that one. The series is just nuts. It's bonkers.
Right on.
So I would definitely recommend somebody pick up The Courier if you haven't read it. But
If you want dialogue, go read Jeff Strand.
oh, okay.
Best dialogue.
Nice, nice. Very good, very good. Where can people find you if they have more questions, more information that they need?
You can find me through my website at michaelmcbride.net. Also on Facebook. I don't really do the social media thing too much. It's just not my
Yeah.
jam.
No, I get it. I get
Mhm.
it. Yeah, I unfortunately live deep within it, so it's
Gotcha.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I kind of have to. It's how I kind of coordinate with people. So,
No, I am sure.
and email for me is just annoying.
Gotcha.
I hate emails. Because I don't know if like I like sending it and
Mhm.
then seeing read. Like I like making
Right.
sure that it's actually been seen. In an
Mhm.
email, I don't have that. It's annoying, but I get it. No, I
That's
get it.
true.
I wish I wasn't as into social media as I was. Thank God I'm not into Twitter. I was for a little bit because I would follow like a bunch of like fantasy football writers and stuff and like movie stuff, but
Mhm.
it's too freaking toxic. I
Right.
just can't do it.
Yeah.
At
Well,
least
that's the whole thing.
Facebook and Instagram at least have gotten a little more a little more pleasant depending on who you follow. But yeah, I use it just because it's easy to use for promotion. But that's
Right.
about it. Yeah, I get
No,
it.
yeah. But like you said, I mean, it's all so toxic anymore. Nobody talking to each other, just talking at each other.
Oh, I know. I'm like everybody like we always said everybody was a doctor because of WebMD, right?
Right, right.
So it's like you would self-diagnose yourself to death and then you would actually just get sick from worry. Uh,
Mhm.
that's how it's become on Twitter with just like headlines. It's like
Mhm.
you're now a political advisor because you've seen a headline.
Right,
It's
right.
like I'm like,
Exactly.
oh man, I can't take this. I'm done. I'm out. It's like I have one ghost account and it's
Mhm.
literally just to follow fantasy football writers. That's all I do is just follow like 20 different writers just for information on like injuries and stuff.
Okay.
And that's all I really do anymore. I can't do anything else. I'm
Are
just
you a
like
fantasy guy or do you just like the sport?
no, no, no. I've been in the same league for 18 years.
Gotcha.
So I've won it 3 of the last 6 years.
Yeah.
And it's a stakes league. There's an entry fee.
Gotcha.
So it's nice when I do well, and it's terrible when I don't. But no, I'm actually deep into that world,
Gotcha.
and specifically the fantasy part of it. Like I don't particularly like. I'm a Lions fan. My whole family's from suburban Detroit, so I grew up a Lions fan. I grew up a diehard Red Wings fan.
Joey Harrington is my sister's the godfather of my sister's daughter.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool. The Duck. Yeah.
they're friends from college.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, so she went to the O. She went to Oregon.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
She
that's
lived
cool.
with him for a while she was doing her residency in Detroit too.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. No, yeah, Joey. I liked him.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yeah,
He wrong place, wrong time.
yeah. That was the story of most athletes being drafted by the Lions back then.
Mhm.
So I get it. At least now there's hope. There's hope now with the current staff in place.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I follow my players. I
Mhm.
don't like. I love watching the Lions, but I'm not like only watching the Lions. Like I'm in South Florida, so you can imagine all it is just Dolphins, and
Right.
then Giants and Jets because it's very much New York Part 2 down here.
Right.
And it's like I don't care about any of those teams. I just don't like. I support the Dolphins just because it'd be nice for them to do well, uh,
Mhm.
mostly for my neighbor's sake. Then I won't have to hear about it so much. But yeah, no, I'm a Michigan Wolverines fan. Never
Yeah.
a big basketball fan. I followed the Pistons back in the '90s, early 2000s when they were doing well, but I was never a big basketball guy. I've always been bigger Tigers fan, but I was always a big Red Wings fan growing up, especially back in when they were winning every year. And then hated the Avalanche.
Oh
Uh,
man, those are the best times.
those
That
were
was a
the
popular
best.
topic, man.
Those were the best times to
Oh,
be a hockey fan.
absolutely.
Oh my god, watching those specifically those two teams.
Uh-huh.
Oh god, they hated each other.
Yep.
It wasn't like, oh, we are a rivalry like Dolphins Jets. No, they hated each other to the point to where they would go out of their way to make sure somebody got hurt. Like they hated each other.
Well, and did you know that when Adam Foote retired, it was Brendan Shanahan who gave his introductory speech at the Hall of Fame.
Was it really?
Yeah, because they were just such good competitors who hated each other so much, but it's one of those things where they brought out the best in each other.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that's yeah. Paul Coffey was saying the same thing about those teams. I mean, all those guys, they were all like, you know, I mean, all I can think about is Chris Osgood and Patrick Waugh just duking it out in the middle of the ice. I mean,
Oh
that
yeah.
was God, that was the best. I
Hmm.
mean, and then Darren McCarty and Claude Lemieux,
Yep.
those two guys hated each other. That was like something spectacular to watch those guys go at each other. But
Oh yeah.
I mean,
So
Kurt Maltby, trying to think of the because it was Kurt Maltby, Chris Draper. Of course, that started it all when Draper got checked into the boards,
mhm.
face first into the boards.
Yep.
I mean, that was like, Joey Kosher, oh man, those teams were, they were both amazing. I loved watching Sakic and Forsberg and
Oh yeah.
and Lemieux and uh, Al McGinnis, right? He played for you guys for a little bit. Did he? No, he didn't play on defense. No, Ray Bork. That's right, Ray Bork.
Bork
I
and
was trying to
Blake.
think of like one of the classic defensemen that played for you guys for a while.
And it's very
Um,
good into hockey and with my youngest or with my kids in Colorado, because like you'd go to a rink, there'd be Milan Hajduk. There'd be just the Avalanche take their kids to the same rinks, and it's just like weird, like rubbing shoulders. Oh, I watch you on TV, and we were watching our kids. It's just weird.
That was cool. Yeah, I went to a playoff game down here where it was the Panthers and Devils,
Mhm.
and we got skybox tickets. My entire family just dipped in to do a skybox for the game, and we were like, "Screw it, let's splurge. This is gonna be cool."
Yeah.
And the guy next to me, so the other box, so a little glass partition, next box over, was Pavel Bure's dad, because that's when Pavel played for the Panthers.
Mhm.
And I was just like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." Of course, Panthers lost the game because I think that was the year the Devils won everything. New Jersey, I think, won the cup that year. But
Mhm.
that was Martin Brodeur, Scott Niedermayer. That was all the well that era. Like I said, that era of hockey was like, and then of course it all fell apart when they went on strike.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's honestly when I stopped watching a ton of hockey at the time, is when they all went overseas and we lost a ton of players. But
Change
getting
the.
it, yeah, it changed everything.
Mhm.
It absolutely changed. I'm getting more and more into it now, especially with the Wings, with their younger guys that they're bringing up.
Mhm.
And of course, the Avalanche winning last year. That
Yep.
was cool. I like to see them. I like to see the Avalanche do well, just because it's one of those teams that I grew up watching all the time, because I grew up
Mhm.
watching the Wings, so I was always
Right.
watching them in the Avalanche.
Mhm.
So and Nick's a huge Avalanche fan, so he always rubs it in my face. But because they're doing well, right? They've been doing well, and the Wings haven't been. So he goes, dude, it was 25 years of the other. He goes, the Wings were the best team in hockey for 2 decades. You
Yeah.
got to give me something. But no, cool, yeah. Great to talk to you, Mike. I
As well.
really appreciate it. You coming on.
Mhm.
Um,
Thanks for having me.
if anybody, please check out Mike's stuff on Amazon specifically. He's always got great new stories coming out. If you've liked what you've seen, please subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and give us a like. Tell your friends. The more people watching this, the more episodes I get to do, because I just enjoy the hell out of it.
Right
So
on.
I really, really, really do appreciate you coming on, and we'll have you back on down the road. Okay, my
Thanks
friend.
very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.